George Orwell once said that those who control the present control the past. History has always been subject to interpretations. But should textbooks become prey to attempts at rewriting or reshaping history? The controversy has erupted once again with changes in NCERT textbooks that were not revealed earlier. The NCERT, or the National Council for Education, Research and Training, has updated, or as they're calling it, rationalized its syllabus for history textbooks. NCERT books are used in almost all CBSE schools across the country. Millions of students study them every year. So what the NCERT prescribes and publishes is indeed very consequential. This list of changes was made public in June last year, and the reason for these changes was that students grappling with education post-COVID needed some relief. Hence, textbooks would be lightened and syllabus pruned. But one particular cut that was not revealed in the list in June has become the latest flashpoint. Here are some of the sentences that were removed from class 12th political science books. Let me read out some of the parts that have been purged. Gandhi was particularly disliked by those who wanted Hindus to take revenge or who wanted India to become a country for the Hindus, just as Pakistan was for Muslims. This line has been removed. Here's another example. Government of India cracked down on organizations that were spreading communal hatred. Organizations like RSS were banned for some time. Another exclusion was a reference to Nathuram Godse as a Brahmin from Pune. Now, the opposition is calling it an attempt to saffronize education, but the NCERT has denied all these charges. They say the deletion is part of a rationalization exercise to reduce the burden on students. They call it an oversight, and nothing has been purposely deleted when asked why these changes were not revealed in the June list from last year. So what does one make of it is the question. But before that, let's listen in to some of the reactions coming in.
I must say, I think it's part of this reinvention of history that this government has been doing, particularly in those states where they are in power in the state government, and subsequently attempting as well nationally. The excuse appears to be that because of the COVID, students had an extra burden and that burden should be reduced. But the truth is, choosing what to reduce of the burden is also highly selective. And they have chosen to go after their favorite targets, whether it is the Mughal monarchs, whom they obviously are trying to demonize on the grounds of religion and alleged religious persecution and so on, and the voices of people like Mahatma Gandhi, what they stood for, the actions of democratic governments after independence that are not to the liking of the present ruling party. Those are the things that are attempted to be, unfortunately, excised from the books.
Look, it was recommended, but it might be a case of oversight. Sometimes everything is not carried out. My, website, who is responsible for the website, Professor A.P. Behra, Joint Director CIT, he also gave his version that it is a matter of omission, it might have not been taken care while uploading that content, but it was not purposely, and nothing was deleted or added after the rationalization process.
तुषार गांधी जी के प्रपौत्र जरूर हैं, पर मेरा ख्याल है गांधी जी को अभी तक वो समझ ही नहीं पाए। सिर्फ प्रपौत्र होना ये कोई बड़ी बात नहीं। मैं समझता हूँ महात्मा गांधी का जितना सम्मान महात्मा गांधी जी के सपनों को साकार करने का काम मोदी जी ने किया है, उतना आज तक किसी भी नेता ने नहीं किया। उसका सीधा एक उदाहरण बताता हूँ, स्वच्छ भारत। स्वच्छ भारत का जो सिंबल है वह है महात्मा गांधी का चश्मा।
So is history being rewritten? Is there objectivity in the parts that are being cut out? And what is the bigger picture? To speak on this, I'm joined now by HindolSengupta Author and Historian, Professor Geeta Bhatt, academician and political analyst. With me on the show, Advocate Kapil Madan, political analyst with me, and Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. HindolSengupta, let me begin with your take, because the allegation is that history is being saffronized. Parts which are inconvenient or which are disliked by the current dispensation are being cut out. The other side says that this was only required. Now, do you buy the NCERT version that there's nothing political about it? It's all part of the business of relooking at textbooks every year.
I have a broader point to make, Tamanna. My broader point is that I haven't seen these cuts in the books themselves. However, I have a broader point. And my broader point is history must always be relooked at. In Britain, for instance, today history is being relooked at. Try and understand why British students are not taught about colonial history. Most British students who go to British schools know nothing about the colonial legacy of the Raj. And one of the people, whose bike you carried, Shashi Tharoor, has spoken a lot about this issue among many others. Now, history ought to be rewritten and re-understood and reanalyzed and refiltered for every generation. Every generation has the right to relook at history from their point of view. That's a fundamental right that every subsequent generation has. And sometimes they'll be right, sometimes they'll be wrong, and so on and so forth. That's fine. However, my other point is other point is among the 2 or 3 things that you pointed out. One of the things is blatantly wrong. Nathuram Godse, as anybody who has read his final speech or his final testament to the court knows, Nathuram Godse never claimed he wanted to make India a replica of Pakistan. He never said that. He, in fact, in that statement said that he actually, believed that there was a secular ethos to India and Hindus and Muslims should live together. But he was against certain acts of Gandhi. He never said he wanted to, make India another Pakistan. The other points, of course, there are some problems.
HindolSengupta, I want 1 minute. I want to come to the first point you made, which was the broad point, and I think that's the important one at the end of it all. That history should be relooked at again. And there's no problem in revising and going back to history. The question is how. Was there a transparent method to make these series of cuts? Was enough public opinion from all sides taken on board? And ostensibly, the reason is not to rewrite history. It's to lighten the load for students. So we don't really know, do we?
We don't, and of course, these are the questions that you're asking now, Tamanna, are questions that have to be put to NCERT and to officials who are part of this process. Obviously, an outsider cannot answer this question. But of course, there is no such thing. Let me be absolutely clear. When history is relooked at in any country, there is no such thing as taking everybody on board. That's just not possible. However, having said that, in a government process, there needs to be filters, there needs to be checks and balances. And in that sense, some of the questions you're asking are absolutely valid, and it is up to NCERT and other government officials to answer those questions.
All right. So, what raised flags in this case was that there was a list put out in June, and then a newspaper article actually highlighted these current set of cuts that we're talking about pertaining to Mahatma Gandhi. Sanjay Hegde, is it being looked at from more sinister purpose than it may have been when the NCERT chief says that it was an oversight, that these particular cuts didn't make it to the list? The idea overall is not to, make history lopsided for students, but to actually lighten the load. Why should that not be taken at face value?
That means there was a mistake. If there was a mistake, it needs to be corrected, doesn't it? If certain sentences got chopped out and you want to replace, you want to put them back in, there are always ways of doing it. No, what you want to is to take it away permanently from the book. Now, as a matter of fact, when you read out those passages, I think Hindol has conflated too many things. As far as the passage relating to Nathuram Godse only said that he was a Brahmin from Pune.
Oh, there was another
the other passage that he conflated, yes. The other passage that he conflated was that there were people who believed who did not like Mahatma Gandhi's resistance to making India a Hindu Pakistan. That was the tenor of the other passage. Hindol just went on about Nathuram Godse saying it. Nathuram Godse said no such thing. Yeah, this is like building a straw man and destroying it. Doesn't take you anywhere. Now, as far as re-recording history is concerned, this is like that classic thing from the Mahabharata, where Yudhishthira is supposed to have said Narova Kujarova very quietly, and then Ashwathama Hataha was shouted out loud. So that is exactly, if you want to selectively make cuts in history, then things do not stand up to any kind of analysis. If you delete the Mughals from history, whom did Shivaji fight? Or whom did Maharana Pratap fight valorously against? So history is a composite of a whole host of events. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, everything.
But Mr. Hegde, may I ask that is the repository of India's history and its political history all, based on this NCERT textbook?
No.
It's become a lightning rod to say that this is what the government of the day is trying to do.
I'll tell you.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're trying to prune it. We also have a new education policy. Just give me a second, please. We also have a new education policy, which is saying change the way we educate our students. We need to come into, the modern time, not make it all very text heavy. Go and learn things on your own as well. So have these textbooks become the repository of saving India's history from some kind of, mutilation?
Tamanna, what you learn as a child is what stays with you for a very, very long time. My interest in history was sparked by my textbooks in class 3, class 4. And so even if you ask me something about Maratha history, I studied in Bombay. I know it from my textbooks, and then I read up. If you create a weak foundation or a wrong foundation, there will never be an honest examination later on in life. So this is where the game is: catch them young and teach them selectively. So if you're going to prune things, then why don't you prune even 2 + 2 makes 4? That also adds to the
quick response from
children,
Hindol,
doesn't it?
Quick response from Hindol.
I just want to tell
Is this about lightning load on children or choosing selectively what to cut out?
No, look, I mean, I just want to tell Sanjay that the point is not just about Nathuram Godse, the Hindu Mahasabha. You take who you will. Or Gandhi's main detractors never ever said, none of the main figures ever said they wanted to create a sort of Hindu Pakistan. This is just not true. And therefore, that sentence is obviously factually incorrect. Now, the other point about, I'm glad Sanjay, enjoyed his school textbooks, which is wonderful. I, for instance, really feel that my school textbook didn't teach me much about Indian history at all. It went straight from sort of the Harappa, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, went straight to, sort of medieval India and then to the British. There were large swaths of history which I learned independently much later in life. Whether it's the Marathas or the Sikhs or people like the battles, famous battles like the Battle of Kolachil, you take the Cholas, large swaths of Indian history were never given enough attention, and the Mughals were mentioned. So let me make one last point about the Mughals. No one can delete the Mughals from our history. However, in the large span of India's history of 5,000 years or more, they should be given appropriate attention. The point is, they have been given far more than appropriate attention, and many others have not been given adequate attention. In this large span of Indian history, they should be given appropriate attention, and no one can ever delete them. No one can delete these figures. However, the balance is all wrong, and we need to fix that balance. That's my point.
But who decides that? Who decides that, HindolSengupta? This is an interesting conversation because we have 4 people on this panel with different views. you have a view that the Mughals got too much attention. Sanjay Hegde thinks that perhaps they're being culled. And of course, I'll come to Kapil Madan and Geeta Bhatt in a second to think, you to know what they think. But the fact is that what you learn in school or what students are learning, shouldn't it be devoid of political undertones, ideology?
No, it can't be.
And all of
It
these
cannot
things,
be.
all of these things that they will face later in life.
No, Tamanna,
Why should education be colored? Why should education be colored?
It always is. Tamanna, you're asking one of the most fundamental questions, which is anything in life not political? And the answer is no. Everything in life is indeed political. When I grew up in Calcutta, and I read history and I looked at the world through the way the communist government in Calcutta wanted me to look at. Sanjay in Maharashtra would have looked at it in a different way, and so on and so forth. There is no taking away politics from school education. This is not true in any country in the world. There's always going to be bias. And to answer your question, who decides? Every generation decides. Every political process which is in power.
I mean, I for one would want the children of this country, students of this country, to be able to make up their own minds, like you have, Hindol. You may have studied one thing, but your worldview today might be very, very different from what you studied. You had the opportunity to do that. Will students right now have that opportunity? Kapil Madan wants to come in. Yes, Kapil.
Yes, so Tamanna, I would like to make a very quick observation here. I heard the officer, maybe a professor from the NCERT, he very, very categorically and very candidly, he made a statement that it appears to be a mistake. It is not a deliberate omission. Now here I am hearing another panelist who's trying to justify and say that, Nathuram Godse didn't kill Mahatma Gandhi because, because of, he wanted to create a Hindu nation or something like that. Now, I would have, understood, maybe the professor, any officer from the NCERT, making such statement. They don't make any statement on fact. They don't say,
one sec. Kapil Madan, couple of things I want to clarify. One minute. Couple of things we need to clarify to make this debate sane. And that was actually something Sanjay Hegde also said. The NCERT chairman is saying the fact that this particular cut on Mahatma Gandhi's assassination was not in a list they published in June was the oversight, not the cut in itself. Let me say that again for our panelists and our viewers. The act of cutting out those lines was not the omission. That they did not put it in the list in June is the omission. So he is not saying that cutting it was wrong. He is saying that मैंने जून वाली list में ये डाला नहीं, वो oversight है.
Okay. He wanted to conceal.
Tamanna, I will just make a very, very small observation. The fact is that he is not giving you any contrary view. He is not saying whatever was stated in the NCERT book is factually not correct. He don't give any alternate version. He does not, come with any other theory. And he very, very, plainly, he just, tries to, divert the attention and say this is an omission. I would, I'm a little surprised here. The panelist, Mr. Sengupta here, is trying to give an alternate version. He is trying to justify and he is trying to give an impression to the audience that whatever was stated in NCERT, stating that, the RSS was in, Godse from RSS was involved, and therefore, if, that was withdrawn, I mean, this is factually incorrect. I mean, he is trying to give this kind of an impression. All I am trying to say here...
He is giving his point of view. Kapil Madan is giving his point of view. He's been invited for his point of view. Can you please tell me what your view is?
At least the impression that I got is that he is trying to give a justification of whatever was stated earlier, which is now omitted, was factually incorrect. And he gives an alternate version of what truly happened. I mean, this is the impression at least I got.
Let me come to Professor Geeta Bhatt. Frankly, the issue here that most people watching this will be concerned about is what are their kids learning in school and college? What is this generation learning, and is their view of what Indian history is going to be very, very different from a decade ago? Is it going to be an alternate history? That's the question. And the basic point, should history or the study of history be colored by the politics of the day?
Well,
Yes, Professor
Vidya, I'll
Bhatt.
start with your second question, Tamanna ji. And I remember that in the year 2000, there was a change in the books of the NCERT that was done by whosoever was looking of the institution at that time. And generally, the national curriculum framework, it is a standard practice is for 10 years, right? Now, when there was a change in the political power in the year 2004, and when the UPA government came, Mr. Arjun Singh became the HRD minister. And after becoming the HRD minister, it was just within a month or so that all the books of the NCERT, the syllabus that was completely changed, loads of, truckloads of books were actually replaced, and new books which were published were again sent for the curriculum and decided that these are the NCERT books. So from this, I think one can have, your viewers can take and, interpret that how politics at times can affect the way the textbooks have been written in the past. Now, the second question is, but nevertheless, I still would like to say that the National Council for Education and Research Training, NCERT, is a very, very, a very important institution, and an institution which has been there for decades together. There are people who are experts of subjects who are there, and each chapter, irrespective of the subject, each chapter is prepared by a list of experts. It is not one individual who prepares it. And the practice continues even till date. And hence, the changes that have been made in the history books that have been done, we at least need to give that much of credit to NCERT, that it is in the best of the knowledge, in the best of understanding of the subject, because it has been done by
Professor Bhatt, 1 minute. Let's go into specifics then. Why should details about 2002 Gujarat riots not be in our history books? Why should such crucial details around the assassination of the Mahatma not be in our history books?
I want to put a counter question, that was 2002 the only riot that took place in the country ever since independence has happened, that it has to be there in the history books, and none of the other riots need to be listed or
no, but are none of them there? Are none of them there?
Counter question.
No, but that counter question would be valid. That counter question would be valid if other riots were not mentioned in any of the history books. They have not been omitted. It is this one particular reference that has been omitted. How do you pick and choose? And based on what do you pick and choose? Can a syllabus for a student be a political question as an academician? Professor Bhatt, I ask you again.
Yes, I want to put forth.
Shouldn't scholarly rigor be part of what we are teaching our kids?
By asking that question, you are pointing a finger at the experts of the panel of experts who have prepared the history books in the past, and also those who have made the changes that you are talking about in the present day. So, are we trying to say that the experts who were there in the earlier political dispensation, they were very right in putting forth the things that were written? For example,
were they cutting to this extent?
Allow me to speak.
Were they cutting to this extent?
I'm sorry, you're not allowing me to speak. I want to put forth one example here. Like there was in history book of class 8, it was written that Aurangzeb had built various temples in northern part of India. There was an RTI which was put. And in that RTI, the question was always where from this reference has been taken. To which the reply came that they do not have the records to tell that from where this reference has been taken. So there are many such incidences which put a question mark that the listing or the content that has been prepared earlier is there any reference to the context that has been put in these books?
Fair point.
That reference is available or not? So
fair point.
There could be. This is just one example. There are many more such.
So Professor Bhatt, if you will allow me, because this is a conversation, ma'am. if you will allow me, that's a very good example. Now, the question here is that you know that this was incorrect factually because an RTI exposed that there was no clear basis for this one piece of information which made it to a textbook, and then it was, I assume, subsequently expunged. Do we know that there is some basis for the current cuts? Where is the transparency? Do we not deserve to know? Or is it going to be arbitrary behind closed doors to decide what gets cut and what stays? In a country like ours, do we need a larger discourse and conversation?
Well, you see, there are many instances where, for example, in earlier some of the books, it was, I was listening to, one of the previous directors of NCERT, and he was mentioning that at a time when he took over, he found that there were books where, Lenin was, actually the picture of Lenin was there in one full page of the political science book, where the other Indian political leaders, their photographs were, put in a very, very small size in the books. So the institution, when, those who are present in the institution and who are working towards making up of the syllabi, they, as per their understanding of the subject, because you see, in history, in political science, there are certain references, I'm sure, from where they are, drawing up or writing from these chapters.
I want Sanjay Hegde to respond. 1 minute. I want Sanjay Hegde to respond. It's not as if everything that was there earlier in the history books before this dispensation was correct. There was also political color and leaning at that point. And this is a course correction.
This is not a course correction. This is a counter-revolution. Let's say, use the right word. Okay, Lenin was given a full page, and now Guru Golwalkar or Ms. Savarkar must have a full page. Is that what Ms. Bhatt wants to say? And according to Mr. Sengupta, basically whoever has the power has the right to write the history book. Whoever is elected writes history. To which my most respectful answer is that those who keep rewriting history will never make history of their own. Or they have a painful history to hide, like the 2002 riots. The significance of the 2002 riots is that it changed the political discourse of this country, whether you like it or not. And when history is written about the current days and the current government, it will be said that they arose out of the Indian reaction to the 2002 riots. We do not know how this particular history will work out. But the more you look at the past and try to reinvent it to make it palatable to the political inclination of the day, the more you take people away from actual fact. Actual fact is that Nathuram Godse was a Brahmin from Pune. Now that is fact. No, you may whitewash it. You may seek to hide it.
Is this whitewashing? HindolSengupta, is this whitewashing? And at the end of the day, in this day and age of information overload and availability of information, how significant are changes to textbooks in determining, how history is viewed?
I believe that the choice of underlining that Nathuram Godse was a Brahmin from Pune is an innocent act at all, considering how many people were butchered, how many Brahmins were butchered in Maharashtra. Surely Sanjay Hegde, who claims so much about his past in Maharashtra, would know how many Brahmins were butchered in Maharashtra after Mahatma Gandhi's assassination for no fault of theirs, but for the fact that they were Brahmins. So to highlight this and forget the genocide of Brahmins in Maharashtra, hundreds upon hundreds who were murdered by mobs, of the Congress party and affiliates after Mahatma Gandhi's assassination, these two things are interconnected. So let's not be selective once again, including in this program, and highlight only what's convenient to us. And at least one thing is clear from this program, that at least our other fellow panelists, Kapil Madan, truly needs to go back and read what Nathuram Godse said and what the Hindu Mahasabha said and many other detractors of Gandhiji said about why they wanted or why they disliked Gandhi and why they did not want Pakistan. And he will learn lots of things through it. And I wish him well, and I wish him an educated time reading all those tracts.
I would say I'm going to take a very short break.
I disagree that anybody could be educated by reading Nathuram Godse. That is not education. That is incitement to violence.
Can I just respond to Mr. Sengupta?
Since he took your name, Kapil Madan, in all fairness, I should give you the opportunity to respond, but I request you keep it brief. Yes.
Yes. So, Mr. Sengupta very enthusiastically, praising and saying Mr. Mahatma Gandhi was killed for a different reason, and he is trying to draw some sort of inspiration out
Mr. Madan, apart
because of which he was killed. This is absolutely absurd. I've never seen any absurd statement.
I have to take a break, but we're continuing this conversation on the other side. I want to thank you all for joining us, because all points of view are important, but the fact is that politics coloring what students learn leaves a feeling of discomfort after some time. Maybe give students the facts and let them decide what their views are on it. Like we let all of you decide what you eventually think about